to the Afghanistan Project Podcast. I'm your host, Beth Bailey, and today my guest is Elizabeth Lynn, who you guys may recognize from, a couple months ago. Elizabeth, time is just it's a circle now. I don't know what's going on anymore, but for those of you who were not able to watch that incredible episode, Elizabeth is the director of nonprofit Operation Recovery. She served in the U.S. Air Force and the Navy Reserves and has received multiple commendations for her service. After holding a variety of positions with the U.S. Postal Service, USCIS, IRS, and other U.S. government institutions, Elizabeth retired in 2020, but then she came out of retirement shortly thereafter to help Afghans left behind in their homeland. Elizabeth, it's great to have you back, but of course it's terrible the reason that you're back. I guess let's start with the story that we're here to talk about first. People might have read it. By the time this comes out, it will have appeared in the Washington Examiner, but give everybody a debrief on what has transpired for this young lady in Pakistan and a host of others that were in the care of a U.S. nonprofit. Please.
This story has been going on this situation has been going on for about a year in Pakistan. December of 2024, I think we first started reporting on it. A family that thought they had a P1, they were processing with IOM, and they thought they had a pathway. They went to Pakistan with that understanding that, they helped the United States, and then they were going to go to Pakistan because they had to go to a third country to process. So, getting there was the priority, escaping the Taliban, leaving the country, and getting out safely. So they did. They got to Pakistan and they were safe. In December of 2024, the mom was electrocuted. And, it was an accident. It wasn't an intentional act at all. She was standing in water and then touched, I think it was the washer. And, she was electrocuted through her hand, through her arm, across her torso. And her whole upper body was pretty much eviscerated with burns. She went to seek medical care. As an Afghan, it was very difficult. So we reached out to a couple different organizations, and one of the people that we reached out to was somebody that we knew was Save the Children, and they got her into the hospital. They knew the people at the hospital she was going to go to. So they got her into the hospital, but she couldn't get a room. They kept her in the hallway. They released her way too early for the burns. And Beth, you've seen the pictures. They're beyond horrific. They're nothing anybody could withstand the pain. And she had no medication, just, really essentially over the counter, no money. And Meredith, she's been amazing, sacrificing so much and trying to send money and so that they could get medical care and still supporting so many families. So they let her go home. Then fast forward, of course, the medical care was so subpar, and just, we reached out to UNHCR, we reached out to different organizations, like, can you help? Can you step in? And really nothing. Nobody wants to step in. Nobody wants to help right now. So, still going through this. One of the daughters was teaching English to try to get money to help get medicine for her mom, medical care. And that's when she was picked up by the Pakistan authorities and then detained. So a couple of days went by, and literally it was pick up a couple of days, and then she's at the border of Afghanistan. So you go from reaching out to everybody to try to keep her from being detained, and then Meredith, has to set up some sort of arrangement to protect her when she gets to the border, because she's 19 years old and she's a single female. So the hardest part of this, and I think that most people listening to this would agree, is that these are all people that thought they had a pathway. Their particular pathway was one of trauma, in the sense that what they thought they had, they didn't. So we were able to get that pathway started again, and then for this to happen. So now what's happened is that the family's divided. She's on the P1 case. She's, under 21, allowed to be on the case, but now we have that family split. So we have, a single female in Afghanistan. The mom still needs medical care. She was working to provide medical care, and she's gone. So, the trauma is, it just, now it's broken up into multiple countries, multiple locations, and it's a family divided where they were together.
Yeah, it's horrible. And so I did see the pictures, and honestly, it's like there's not even skin. That was one of the more horrifying things I've seen since doing this work for 4 years. And to hear that the callousness of it all too, because Meredith told me about what the Pakistani police said to the sister when the sister came to beg for, we're calling her K's release. And they said, don't worry, your sister's beautiful. She's, fertile. She'll find a husband. And that it doesn't surprise me. I had David Collier on a couple weeks ago, and it was a hard episode for me to shoot. He went to Afghanistan to tour, wanting to see, not because he was a supporter of the Taliban like many of these tourists these days are, but because he wanted to see the country. And he was talking about watching Pakistani refugees coming through Torkham, and Afghan refugees coming through Torkham, and the Pakistani police just beating them. With Westerners watching as if it just didn't even matter. Like they were not humans. And I was not at all surprised to hear that they said that to Kay, and that they were so callous about what was going to meet her. I mean, you can't even, as a single female, you can't even travel in that country by yourself. And so what are they supposed to do if they can't have a male meet them at the border? There are just so many levels of badness here. So, and then, the fact that USRAP isn't processing, which means that how long are these USRAP families supposed to wait in these circumstances? And when this family could have, had they known, this is not the first time that a USRAP applicant did not know that they weren't processing. There are people who, there have been multiple levels of terrible with USRAP. First it was, you thought you were processing, but you never got an ARR number. And it took a long time for people to understand that meant they didn't have P1 or P2. And some of them were already gone because they were told, you have to, if you're in this, you're going to have to go over here. They might not have been told by the U.S. government, but that was the deal. You couldn't stay where there was no U.S. embassy to process you. And then you had, people who were told that they were processing. They had the ARR number, but things weren't working and there was no mechanism. Then you had people who were trying to get UNHCR to help them because they can't work. They can't go to school. They have no support and they're dealing with these exorbitant costs. Luckily, this family had Meredith to help them with some of those costs at great expense to Meredith. But, it's just heinous that our choices, our things that we did have left people in such a terrible situation. And so I guess now that I have vented my feelings about it, what does the future look like for everyone in this scenario and for everybody else? Because it wasn't just Kay who was deported.
No. You have there's another female with her young son, and 2 minor boys. And I think the hardest thing is that, even in the military, you would go through all these classes about human trafficking and what to look for and what to, when we're watching what is happening in real time, it's everything that we were taught to watch for, and we're here and they're, a world away and we can't do anything to help them. We can't step in. We can't, take them, into our homes and protect them. The hardest thing I think for all of us in this work is that you so often you try to fix a situation and then you wait and then the worst happens. And so many people, just, you never hear from again. And, when they take, like they wanted in Pakistan, they wanted her to leave the passport, leave the sister, leave her passport with the Pakistan authorities. And, and Meredith said the same thing, like, as soon as she walks away and they have the passport, they're going to arrest her for not having her documents. And when they take their phones and they take the kids' phones and they can't tell their parents where they are or that they're okay, even if the conditions are harsh, you know, you expect that. The conditions are terrible. But if you can't tell your parents that you're alive, how hard is that on the families that, have no idea what's going to happen?
Yep. And this isn't just, so the UN, we're filming this on the 24th. The UN today released a large report, UNAMA and the UN Human Rights Office, saying this is what we've recorded from other allies, members of the former Afghan government, ANDSF, etc., women, human rights activists, all these things. And it's heinous. And they said, stop these deportations. But Pakistan's not going to do that. Iran
No.
is not going to do that. And so you look at, particularly what bothered me was the boys too. People, yes, the situation for women and children is heinous beyond belief, women and girl children. But we forget that it's really bad for boys as well. They have been conscripted into service. They have been turned into sex slaves, for lack of a better word, in the practice of bachabazi, which we never thought that the Taliban engaged in. But there are pictures and video that Lark Escobar and I went through and wrote a report on in I think we broke the story in July of 2022 because nobody else was touching it, because they all believed the Taliban didn't do it because they used to outlaw it. I've seen the pictures in the video. The Taliban do that. And actually, there were more videos that came out of a Kandahar camp where a Taliban commander was messing around with a boy, forcing him to kiss him in his sleep, and then other things going on that were filmed too. None of it was overtly like a sex act, but it was sexual conduct with a child.
Exploitation. Yeah.
And it's sickening. And so, all of these things, it's not just the girls. It is everyone. These are not people who treat
anybody.
Yeah, like humans. If they can use them, they are going to use them. And they're, they want what they want. And I think we just have to, we've forgotten who they are. And
well, we haven't, but there's so much trauma in the world that it's hard to just dial in and understand what's actually happening. I think like the thing that we need to still talk about are what is going on in Afghanistan, what is going on in Pakistan. We can't treat Pakistan like it's not a platform, because that's where we told everybody to go. So if you're going to go after and protect people at UAE, and you're going to protect people at CAS, those same people are we're processing in Pakistan. And whether they self-deported, but if they were under CARE purview and CARE was aware and working with them. So, and that again goes back to when families are split and deported, we're creating so much excess stress on these families that are already, for 4 years have been waiting in some cases. So, then when they go back to, they're deported back to Afghanistan, and, just the conditions, I challenge anybody to come up and say, hey, I saw a report on Afghanistan and they're good. I challenge anybody to do that, because it's not going to happen. When we watch what is occurring and we watch people getting deported, it's not just that they're going back. It's they gave everything away. They sold everything. They have nothing. They haven't worked. They have no access to food, and they're being put in a place that doesn't have food to give. They don't have jobs. So you're not just saying, oh, well, they're just going back to Afghanistan. That's not good. And like I said, I challenge anybody to tell me that Afghanistan is good right now. We have people in charge that, should never be in charge. And what's happening with the women that are getting, that they're getting arrested. We know that the Taliban are not treating them well. And, but they're at the same time that they're abusing, like, whether it's boys, whether it's girls, whether it's, married women that are getting picked up, and there's no line for them that they won't cross. And, then they threaten the families, so they're saying to the family, if you talk about this, we're going to come after you. And we know that they will. So, the families are afraid to speak to it. There's no challenge to, crossing those lines. You can't, there's not going to be an arrest. There's nobody to go after, and there's no court system there set up there to do that. Everything is set up to defend the Taliban and only the Taliban, and there's no defense for the people.
Absolutely. And I want to go back on something I said. I said it's bad enough for women and children, whatever. I want to make it very clear. It's terrible for women and little children. Like, I don't want to make it sound like I was trying to gloss over that and saying it's not so bad. Just like you said, I mean, we know what happens to women in Taliban prisons. Mm-hmm. And I've mentioned it on this podcast. I can't tell you how many times, but I will say it again. There are documented instances of women being forced to have abortions because they have been impregnated by the Taliban, of women being killed by the Taliban because of the illnesses that they acquired and then the bad treatment they got while being raped in Taliban prisons. Mm-hmm. There are, and for anybody who says that's not true, because I've asked the Taliban if that's true, and of course they said no. And then when this all came out, The Guardian came out and said, no, we've seen the video, because just like you said, Elizabeth, it was this woman had been gang raped in a Taliban prison. They had filmed it, telling her, if you tell anyone about this, we're going to send this out here, thinking they're going to send it out inside Afghanistan and ruin her future there. Mm-hmm. What they didn't expect is that she was brave as hell. She didn't. She said, "Okay, you're sending it to me. Great. Here it is. Here, Guardian, see this. This is what's happening here." And the Taliban think they're smart and they think they're the big dicks on campus. But here's the thing: the world knows who they are. Mm-hmm. They can go to Germany and they can tell people, "Oh yeah, you have amnesty. Come back." The world knows reprisals are happening. Mm-hmm. We're not stupid. We just don't have the ability to do anything about it right now. Mm-hmm. But nobody believes them, like, except for all these frat boy idiots who travel to Afghanistan to go on a break
for fun.
Yeah. It's like, y'all, I don't really care what you think anyway, because you're not somebody I'd be friends with. So whatever. You go ahead and let
you make poor decisions. That's on you.
On public television, right? But everybody else knows exactly who they are. It's just a question of what can you do about it. Mm-hmm. And that's the hard part. And it is so hard when you have someone you care about that you have, for Meredith, you've watched and cared about for some time. She's known Kay for some time, a very long time.
Yeah.
And to then have this happen and not be able to go hop a plane and stop it.
No, that's the humor in it, is that you can't, and you have to find that space where, you say these things like, we're going to go. She met with a war veteran today at a shop, and, he was like, let's go. And we're thinking, yes, let's, because if we could, we would. If we could go there and fix things, if there was a way, we would. But it's going to take something bigger than, just me and Meredith having a conversation. It's got to be these world powers that step up to the plate and say enough. This isn't right. And everyone there that is committing these acts, these acts of violation, need to be held accountable. There's no excuse not to hold them accountable. When we talk about different, crimes against humanity, this is so exposed, and yet we just, hope it goes away. People are saying, so much about everywhere else in the world, and we just, don't talk about it enough.
Yep. And the things that we say about Afghans increasingly are just heinous and horrible. And it's like, these are the people you begged to come on your side for 20 years.
Yes.
And now
Yeah.
what? Like, no. That, and to the people who served, that meant something. It wasn't just like a, let's do what the U.S. government says. Like, they cared. They grew to
Yeah.
care so much for the people who were there with them and selflessly do so. It's just to see how quickly it turned just absolutely boggles my mind. I can't get over it. Well, let's talk about some of the other stuff, because obviously other deportations are happening. I had people sending me messages with videos of these deportations with which are happening in many cases in the dead of night.
Yeah.
Pakistani police rolls up to somebody's apartment, pulls them out of it. I watched a group of women who were affiliated with a prosecutor case just running through the woods trying to avoid the Pakistani police, saying like, we'll be killed if we're sent back. We can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to me about that. The platform anxiety, I think is how you worded it. Tell me about what that is.
So for Pakistan, everybody wants, a letter saying that they have a case. And that's what they're being told to show. It's that we go back to that letter. At UAE, I think it's kind of, when you think about that location, it's kind of the forgotten spot, right? We've just moved on to so many different platforms, so many different places where we were operating out of. UAE was like, the forgotten people. And when, there was some outreach about one of the families and he was, special forces. And he's like, if I go back, I'm dead. Like, and then what's my family to do? So he was one of the families at UAE that was going to be deported. We found out on Friday, and then, he was supposed to leave on Saturday. That got, canceled. Thank goodness. I just can't even imagine, though, the anxiety, the human toll when somebody's told that they're going to go back to the person that's going to kill them. Like, who's okay with that? So, I really applaud whatever happened to make that stop. But the people at CAS, there's, several families, and there's so many types of people there, so they can't be lumped up into one group. You have SIVs processing there, and that was like a little thing with my hands there, but but there's just so many different types of people there, and these are like, parents with little children, babies that got rid of everything. They're at CAS, they're processing, everything is just, going along, and then suddenly it comes to a screeching halt, and by screeching, I mean screeching, out loud screeching halt. And, they're just waiting for that policy, and everybody kept saying, we're going to review it in 90 days. We're going to look at it in 90 days. We're going to take a look at the vetting. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to make these changes. You know what? Do it. Well, we're well past 90 days, and there has been no, the only hubbub that we've had is that we're not only going to have the refugee ban, but we're also going to have the, travel ban. And that's going to include our Afghans. So now they have to overcome two different things to come here. And, with all the people being let go, the processing is obviously slowed, if not to a standstill. So to sit there at CAS and know that you've given everything up, and know that you have daughters, that are sitting next to you, and then to watch, the deportations of Pakistan. So, I attribute that to that's happening in real time. They're watching it, and nobody's saying anything about it. And these are the same people that were in care housing. These are the same people that were in safe houses. These are the same people that were told, and it's still on the website. If you go to the Afghan Inquiry's website, it still talks about care, and it still talks about the fact that you need to get to a third country to continue to process your case. So we're not fixing the problem. It's still sitting there, and it's still on the government website. So people did that, and they're watching people get sent back from Pakistan, their care was operating out of Pakistan. The UAE fiasco, they're watching that. So if you're sitting at CAS, all you can think about is, we're next. Are we next? Are they really going to do that? And that's us. That's like, me. And, it's our country doing this to these people. And these are all people that we know. These are people that, worked alongside of American soldiers. These are people that, learned and trained for 20 years alongside of us. So, how do we sit idly by and just watch this happen? And when it's something that we can correct, we can fix it. And, so, it's just heartbreaking, because when you think about everything that we have done for 4 years, and then you have no communication, which tells me, lots of government service here, 2 branches of the military. If you're not talking to me, it means you don't know what you're doing. What are you going to do? You haven't created a plan. You haven't made any decisions. You haven't communicated to us that this is the process, this is the way we're going to do things. And I think the last time we talked about, maybe this is going to, maybe they'll come up with a way. We're still waiting. So when you don't talk about it and you don't communicate to us in this work, then all it says to me is that, we're not even looking at this. We're not even worried about it right now.
Yeah. Well, and so I've been reporting on P1 and P2 since probably January of 2022. And it was so hard to get numbers from the State Department back then. But they gave them to me, and I want to say, and this is my first gripe with P1 and P2, because all those people, the 1,200 people at CAS who are in the USRAP in P1, P2 categories. So for anybody who is not familiar, the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program has 2 categories, Priority 1 and Priority 2. We call them P1 and P2 because it's just easier. And to be qualified for them, you had to have been put in by a member of the U.S. government or some other American, or in some cases UNHCR could put you in. But like, they are known to us. We submitted them for this because in the SIV program, in some cases, your supervisor might have been, your direct supervisor might have been an Afghan, so they might be writing your letter, whatever. But that's not as often as some might think. But regardless, we had something like 56,000 people submitted for P1 and P2. Mm-hmm. And I want to say that they accepted like 28,000 of them. Mm-hmm. We identified those people, like, and we can't follow up on that promise based on categories that we created. Knowing who was going to be predated upon. Like, mm-hmm. How dare we? Mm-hmm. How dare we? And then to know that, like, no one will tell us how many. Mm-hmm. I haven't gotten answers on how many people are unprocessed in P1 and P2 since August of last year. Mm-hmm. And I thought that this country was all about open communication. Why is that something that needs to be kept secret? Why can't you answer that question for me?
Right. Where's the transparency? Right. And what's wrong with the transparency? What's so bad about it?
I think no one wants people to know just how many, but this could be spun by the new administration so well. I mean, so well. Look at the
fixing it. Let's fix it.
Let's make it. Make it better. That's what I've hoped for this whole time, and I still have hope. I don't know why, but this weekend
you have to.
Yeah. Well, when President Trump said, "I'm going to do something about it," it's like maybe he did not realize the extent of all of this because he's been so focused on his agenda.
Right.
And I'm just holding out all of that hope for that possibility. And that maybe now, Mary Bishoping can convince people at state, maybe, I don't know, something, nothing, it can't get worse. Right?
Well, yes, it can. Yes, it can.
I know it can. Absolutely it can. But
yeah.
There is a lot that could get better, and I just hope that there will be an aha moment.
Yeah.
Where we realize we can't do this in good conscience.
And like if you're going to tell somebody like, hey, let's work together, let's see what we can do here. And when you think outside of the box and you try to come up with solutions, use CAS as an example. They were pre-vetted. There was travel vetting, care vetted them. There was all kinds of things happening that made them a secure family to come to CAS and to come to a U.S. platform ran by the Department of State. If you're going to attempt to make a change, increase the vetting, do things better, you have your sample pool right there. And then you can expand it to Pakistan and to the other countries where people have traveled to process their cases. So, if you look at things like, if you're going to try to make a change, that's the perfect solution to make this happen and apply those changes and train people. Like, send people to CAS and train them for the interviews, to ask the questions, whatever your vetting process may be, and whatever you're going to do, we can do that. And what how much better can you get the scenario than an enclosed environment that's safe, and that's in your control, because you have all the controls there. So to me, that's the perfect scenario. We have just set them up for success by trying out a new program and doing it there.
Well, let's hope that there are positive developments. I don't know. All of these stories, all of the fear now in that population, the person who sent me the videos, for instance, had told me before, I'm not going to share my story in the media. It doesn't really make a difference. It's not going to change anything. And now it's like, please, I'm screaming out to you, and granted, sharing that story 2 months ago she's right, it would not have made a difference at all. I hope it can now, with the escalation, but it just goes to show you how much it's escalated, that it's that flood that always happens. It happened late January of this year into February. Every day I would look at my inbox and I had just hundreds of Afghan USRAP applicants begging for support.
Yes. Yes. And now everybody wants the letter. I need a letter. They tell me I need a letter. And, and what's wrong with a letter? Because we're not saying you have a ticket to the United States. We're not giving you a plane ticket. And we're also not giving you a confirmation that you are eligible to come to the United States. That's a process. But you are working to get here, and you are one of our allies that we're trying to get here. And that maybe we have people in Pakistan right now that they've interviewed, they've done their medical, they've gotten every confirmation, and they were in that kind of 90-day setting up for travel waiting period, which that's a lot of people. And now they're just wondering what tomorrow's going to bring, because of course then you have the visa stoppage, and kind of the human abuse there too. That's the emails I get. I need a letter, and what am I going to do about my visa? These are people that have been paying for visas for 4 years, and now they're just told, no, we're not going to do that. So, we have a responsibility to them to supply them with, if the Pakistan authorities are asking for a letter and you were processing legitimately with your case, then all they need is a letter saying that they were processing.
Yeah.
That's it. It's not a confirmation. We're not telling anybody that they're coming to the United States. It's not like in August of 2021 when, letters were everywhere. People were trying to get through every possible way to get on a plane, life or death kind of scenario there. It's not like that. They would have a case that could be verified. Why can't we show just some empathy or some semblance of support for our allies?
Yep. And we told them 12 to 18 months. It's going to be 12 to 18 months of processing. And so, if you sold your house, and you sold all your wife's gold jewelry, and you got rid of your car, etc. Yeah. Okay.
And you had enough money to live. Yeah.
4 years with Pakistani prices, which are higher than Afghanistan. How dare we? And you're right. Nobody's asking. So I mentioned this in the article that 4 USRAP families have gotten in since January 20th. They got in because they had a global boarding letter, because the husband had been detained by the Pakistani police and threatened with deportation. To get him out, state had issued a global boarding letter, and they were able to use that after Pasito v. Trump, the first injunction was issued to get to Seattle, or no, to get on the plane in Islamabad, right? And then we got to Seattle, and they're like, here's the Pasito v. Trump order. You have to let me in because I got here. And that was like an incredible. It was a unicorn case, and it was amazing, and those people deserved to be here, and they were incredible people. I didn't even realize until I started looking into the particulars. I'm like, I know one of the people. I've conversed with them before, and I've been so impressed with their intellect and capacity for really deep feelings about other humans, and just like I was so in awe of this person, and I was like, man, there's nobody more that I would say, thank goodness you made it.
You're here. Yeah.
And but you know, that's not what people are asking for. They're not asking for a global warning letter and state, I'm sure now that they know about that loophole,
they're not doing that.
Issue one. But all they need to do is say you're protected. And they're
you have a case. You're processing.
Not willing to do that. And I want to understand that. Like, why? I can't get answers from the State Department when I ask them questions, and that's very frustrating.
You got some sort of confirmation, or you know, kind of a basic understanding, or you know, how many people, I can't even count how many times. Let's just get on a call. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. And you know, conversations. Yes, and even on the record, because they wanted us to share the right way to do things, because everything was so like, it was like, you know, scattered, like, you know, there was so much social media, there was so much stuff out there. I need to do this, I need to do that. You need to do what? You know, and so like, that was the communication. It wasn't that we were trying to get, you know, like inside details on things. It was that we were helping people. You know, we were saying that no, you know, don't submit 4 SIV packages in a day thinking that your chances are going to go up. That's not going to happen, because, you know, it was made easier so they could do that. You know, and just, you know, there was so much duplication, you know, calling every day. No, you don't need to call every day. You can call, you can email, you can do different things, but not every day. You know, so we were trying to help the situation instead of hindering it. And now just that, it goes back to that whole thing where if there's no communication, to me, there's no policy. Nothing's being worked on. And I hope that it is. You know, I hope that we're going to get some sort of, you know, even a website for the Afghans to go to and know exactly what's happening, because it shouldn't be up to us to say nothing's happening. They should be able to go online and see, you know, they're savvy. They're going to look, they're going to read it. All the directions just need to be put out there.
I was thinking about what you said about what state says about traveling. And, you know, their travel warning for Afghanistan was the same one. And I want to just check right now and see what
it's still level 4, I believe.
I just want to make sure, because I don't want to, you know, as a, level 4, do not travel. Crime, unrest, terrorism, risk of wrongful detention, kidnapping, and limited health facilities. And that's for Americans, not for our allies. And it's just like, you guys, what you're putting out there is very different from, everything has changed so much. And I want to give them some grace, right? Because I would like to have State Department as my partner, right? It's my State Department. I want it to work with me. I want to be able to do the right things together. I just want to know what's going on to be able to help out.
Yes.
And I understand, you know, if they're legitimate, I know that there are concerns about vetting and all these things. And I've always said, hey, look, you want to add more vetting? Go for it.
I know, do it.
Yeah. Because I also want to make sure that nothing happens, because I've put 4 years into this, right? And if it blows back and something terrible happens, I will feel some of the guilt of that, right? Even though I didn't do the vetting, I did a lot of advocacy for people. And so, if you need to add something else, go for it. But tell us, please tell us, just keep us in the loop, because it is a very unsettling time. It's been the hardest 6 months of this whole effort, because it's like, you know, in the beginning it was hard because you guys had to create these organizations and create these networks and things. I wasn't there for that. I came in the November time frame and found out that all of that was going on, and just was so enamored and in awe of what you guys were starting to build. And, you know, I watched, because I got to be there for watching like Moral Compass Federation come together and seeing, you know, everybody push out to Ukraine because they created these amazing organizations that could do that. Now everybody knew here's an agile way to go do this. And I got to see all that, and it was really amazing. And I know what can be done, but you need that back and forth, the receptiveness, there's so much that I don't even know happened, because as media, you know, nobody wants to look silly.
We didn't let you on the calls.
And that's okay. I could never have handled the calls on top of
yes,
everything.
exactly.
I had my own weird like network, source network that I was building as I was trying to figure all these things out. Like, we all had our different role, and it's just, I don't know. It was a glorious chaos that I think
it saved a lot of people.
We are. Yeah.
And it saved so many people that were, you know, and I've talked about this before, is that, you know, like, I was person of why I was by myself, you know, and how am I going to do this, and how am I going to get my interpreter, and what am I going to do? And then, you know, just little by little, like you said, these networks were built, and these organizations came together, and, you know, you have somebody saying, we got you, come on, you know, and then next thing you know, we're just catapulting into the work. And, you know, I just think about myself being by myself, you know, and not knowing what to do and who to turn to and who to call. And then suddenly you had that person, and the government coordinating with you, you know, and you're just like, wow, this is like totally, you know, not what I expected, but it was amazing.
Is there anything that we didn't cover tonight, Elizabeth, that you wanted to get out? Because what I really want to hear are your closing thoughts on all this, because they're so spot on. But before we get there, I just want to give you the opportunity for anything else that you want to bring up.
If I had to bring something to light, I would say we did a really good job for the first couple years coming together and identifying things and ways to keep our Afghan allies safe. We're back there again. We have to do everything in our power. You know, the people that are in Afghanistan are not safe. And, you know, they do have access to things like social media, and they do see things. And, you know, my interpreter's here now, but one of the most horrific things that ever happened to me is he sent me a screenshot of somebody posting something that was really good. It was a positive Afghanistan, you know, post. And he replied to it. And when I looked at his social media name, which was his full name, I thought I was going to lose it. But I think we need to go back to that again. We got comfortable. Everything was moving. We were doing things. We were making magic happen every day. I think we need to go back to, you know, that thought process of we need to keep our Afghan allies safe. And we need to remind them of things like, you know, like not posting your full name on social media. And this goes to, you know, wherever you are. If you're at risk of deportation anywhere, and, you know, the authorities look at your phone, that's how they're going to find you. You know, that's just another way for them to get their hands on you. So don't do it. And I think we need to go back to those days where, you know, caution was the rule of thumb. And just remembering that, you know, everything that you do could have consequences. And, you know, we did really good for, you know, the first couple years, and then things got kind of lax, I think. And, you know, we want to talk about Afghanistan, but we have to remember that we should be the ones talking about Afghanistan and fixing the problem, not the Afghans that are at risk. And I think, you know, just putting that out there that we need people to be careful.
Isn't that terrible, though? I mean, if somebody was here, they should have never had to worry about that, you know? And now I've wondered, I think there was a family I covered who took the Brazil route, and I'm pretty sure that they got asylum, so I don't think it's a problem, but we use their last name. They were one of the first ones to come through that way, right? But if they hadn't gotten asylum...
Yeah.
You know, we might have changed the last name. I can't recall, because I always tell people, no, I'm not going to use your name. Like, I will not use your name, and now I'm even more adamant about it. Even if they're like, oh no, but I'm in Pakistan. I'm like, no, triple, quadruple. No.
Yes.
I care about you too much to do
Right.
that. You know.
Right.
And even people in the States, it's like, no, I'm not.
Nope.
Not gonna do that.
No, it's too easy to assign you a new name and tell your story. And let's just be safe. And just, I think everybody, you know, us that are, you know, working from here, or in other countries, but the same, we need to continue to tell, you know, to remind the, you know, Afghans that they need to do everything in their power to be safe. And that means concealing their identity. That means not, you know, not putting your name out there. That means not responding to posts, you know, with your full name, as, you know, so everybody can see it. So just, you know, just going back to that, just be careful. We want you to get here when, you know, things change, or, you know, that pathway opens up, and you need to be alive to do that. Yeah.
So I think those are all such important points, right? We need to protect everyone. We need. Can
I do a congressional gripe? Is that okay?
Yeah, you can do a congressional gripe.
Okay. So I was thinking about this the other day, and with me and Ian, like, you know, reaching out to people and trying to get help for this family that we talked about earlier. I want to say that if I reach out to, you know, a congressional office, and, you know, mine here where I am, they've been great. But, you know, for certain situations, and depending on where their family is, you know, you reach out to other offices. Or somebody connects you to somebody, and you're like, okay, that's great. And then they don't help you. So you, like, go out of your way, you write this entire storyline, you try to explain everything, you get all the data, you know, the family information, all the kids, you put together this beautiful, like, memo, you know, and then you send it to the congressional office, and you get crickets. You don't get a response. But then you start getting their surveys and their updates and everything that goes against everything that you sent. You're just like, wait. So my gripe for tonight is, if somebody reaches out to you, at least respond. And if you don't respond, then don't put me on a mailer. If you're going to ignore my ask, then please just don't send me all those emails. Absolutely.
I think that's only fair. But gosh, the gall, you know?
Yes. So that's my gripe for the day. That's my complaint.
Sad. I was so glad, though, that Representative Titus's office wanted to make a public comment about this, because I had asked if they would want to comment when CARE was taken away, and she had made a public comment elsewhere that was really impactful, and she didn't need to make another comment, so they didn't. But in this case, that she would speak out about this case, that was really, really moving and meaningful. And, you know, UNHCR even responded, and
that's great. That's what we need, though. The
problem is, it's like they couldn't intercede on this one person,
and they haven't. No, and they haven't. So, you know,
I think they're trying. One thing they said that I wasn't able to fit in the article, because I went way over my word count, and because when we talked about it, it was one case, right? That was one case on Monday. By Wednesday, it was 6 people who had been deported, because there was also the SIV applicant that no one left behind was helping, that was deported too. So it's not just USRAP, it's SIV. And it's anybody who, anyway, but UNHCR said that they're trying to work with Pakistan on some kind of registry system where, you know, people who need enduring protection can get it. And I hope that can happen. But I want, Elizabeth, for you to close out with the thought that I know has been haunting you, and that I think is, especially as we're coming up on the anniversary, and it's a really, really, really tough time for veterans of HKIA, veterans of this 20-year war. Please share that parting message, because it's vital.
So, you know, in closing, of all the things that we could talk about forever and ever, the most powerful thing came to me today, out of the blue. And what I want to say is that, you know, the ally of the warfighter should never be the enemy of the administration. whatever country we speak to, these two pillars should align with our allies, specifically when speaking of war, our longest war.
Yep. It's so painful. And that's why I do this. I would not have been brought into this at the level that I was if it had not been, because I had given up. I knew I was never going to make a difference in Afghanistan in 2013 when I left the IC. And I watched the Taliban raise their flag over their frickin' negotiations office. But then I watched Tom Schuman, and I said, I'm done. I can't do it. It breaks my heart. And then I watched Tom Schuman say, my interpreter needs help. And I knew what Tom had been through in Sangin with 3-5 in 2010. And it had broken my heart. All of the Marines who lost their lives because of the Taliban's IED campaign. And so to watch the pain in Tom's eyes. And then from Tom, it grew because I broke that story. And it was very small. I broke it small. And then it got broken wide open by like the New York Times, Chicago Sun-Times, all these amazing people that covered it. And it still didn't get Zach out. Tom's Marines, well, the Marines he knew got Zach out. But other people started coming to me with other stories. And I knew how much it mattered. I had cared so deeply for so many veterans in my writing career before Afghanistan fell, and it was just this perfect storm of how can I, if they care so much, I care too. And of course then you do, because everyone's coming into your inbox and telling you, here's my situation, I filmed my own the cases that broke my heart the other day, and my first one was the man who, instead of just sending me his packet of information, he sent me pictures of his kids, and they looked just like mine. It was their birthdays. They had, these brilliantly beautiful, elaborate birthdays before the fall. And then one of them had celebrated their birthday in the tent that they were living in on the outskirts of their city, because they were Hazara. The Taliban had come in and their dog was no more. His friend was no more. They were afraid for their lives. And instead of balloons, they were holding a printout of a balloon that said happy birthday. And their clothes were dingy from being hand washed. It was just, and I thought, I can't leave this alone. I can never leave this alone. For all the people who care, for all of the veterans who've been scarred by this, by watching the country they've bled for turn back into their enemies' hands, it's unconscionable. So I wish I could give you a hug right now, Elizabeth.
We just need to stand together.
Yep, that's it. And that's what I think people are doing. And that's the one thing I'm so grateful for, is that I've made inroads with all this community, and at the really hard times I can shoot a text to somebody and say, oh, what now? And somebody always has the answer. And I likened it to this because I want to write about all of this, right? And it's like walking through a really dark space, and you don't know what's around you. You don't know what the obstacles are because you can't see them. But then there's somebody with like a candle, and it lights up part of it. So you can just see a little bit. And it's those little candles that it's enough to get through. Yeah. It's not bright. It's not hopeful. But those little bits of hope are enough to keep navigating on. So thanks for being that for other people.
Thanks.
I am so glad that I got to listen to you tonight and talk a lot. I talked a lot tonight. I have a lot of feelings.
Yes. I liken myself to the older veteran on the park bench that can talk forever now. Like, I have a story to tell. I'm way too eager it.
Good. That's what we need. That's, there's too much not talking about the hard things in the veteran population in the past, and that needs to be done. But to do that, civilians like me have to want to listen. And that's the other hard part, is the receptiveness and the understanding enough to engage that conversation. And we should do that after all of this is done, and we're like just sitting there like, what do we do next? Gosh, everything's peaceful. What? That should be the next round. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening, for supporting the people of Afghanistan, for supporting veterans who care about this so deeply that they are still funneling themselves into it. And Tasha Kaur, and hope to see you all again soon.